Hi everyone, welcome back to another video of CambiHub, and in today's video we'll be doing IGCSE pseudocodes topic arrays. We'll be learning everything about arrays, and this is lecture number 5. So let's start without wasting any more time. So what is an array? When we talk about an array is a list, right? A list of items can be called an array. Why do we need an array? Obviously because when we are programming, wherever the code or the program requires something where we have to include a list, right? Then we use an array. We use the concept of arrays, right? And there are two types of arrays in our syllabus, or in general in pseudocodes, or in any programming language, even if you learn ahead, like Python, Java, anything, right? Which is one-dimensional and two-dimensional arrays. Now, what do we mean by one-dimensional and two-dimensional arrays? When I talk about a one-dimensional array, it is a single data stream. It is a list of items in a single data stream. What do I mean by a single data stream? For example, if I have to make a list of students in my class, so let's say if I have to make a grocery list, right? I have a shopping app, and I need to use an array to make a grocery list, right? So how would it be? For example, apples 1 kg, let's say 12 kg, right? And whatever is the measurement, apples, bananas, right? For example, bags, plastic bags, right? Any beverage like tea or coffee. So this is a normal, we can say a list of items, grocery items, right? That I need to make a list of. So if you can see, this is a single data stream, and we have learned about data types. Now what data type is this? This is string, right? Why is it a string? Because it has alphanumeric characters, right? And whenever we have alphanumeric characters, the data type is string. If you don't know what a data type is, I recommend that you start from the starting video of the playlist. You can find the playlist on our channel. If you click the channel, right, and go to the playlist section, you'll find a playlist called 047 in computer science. There you'll find all of the videos for paper 1 and paper 2, right? So right, we were talking about a single data stream. So whenever we have a single list, right, a normal list, that is a one-dimensional array, right? That is a one-dimensional array, right? That's what's called a single dimension, right? When we talk about a two-dimensional array has more than either two or more than two data streams, right? That's why it is called a two-dimensional array, right? So whenever we talk about two-dimensional array, we introduce the concept of rows and columns. Suppose I need to make a list, but it need to have multiple rows and multiple columns, right? If you get confused between rows and columns, because this is a common problem I find with the students, right? So if I have to make rows and columns, right? If I have lines like this, right? So this slanting line or a horizontal line is a row, right? And these sections, they are columns, right? So a row is always like this, a column is always like this, right? So whenever we have multiple data streams, whenever we have rows and columns, that is a two-dimensional array. What could be an example? For example, I need to make an array of students and their score, right? What the name of the students, their age and their score, for example. What was their score in their papers? Or let's say let's take this example. So how would it be? The first column will be of students, right? Right? The first column will be of students. The second column will be their marks, their score. And the third column will be their age, right? So how many columns do I have? I have 3 columns, right? And depending on the number of students, I will have 4 to 5 rows, right? For example, I have 6 students, so I'll have 6 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? I have 6 rows. Let's say, Pranay as a student, Ritik as a student, right? I'm just taking the names of my friends, so don't, go into that. Let's take Sam, let's take Dev, right? Multiple people, right? Their score also 67, 89, 100, 2, right? Let's take their age also, for example, 16, 16, 17, 18, right? We are taking their ages also. So this kind of a set of data, when I have more than 2 data streams, I have the concept of rows and columns. We put it in a 2-dimensional array, right? So I hope you have understood the difference between a 1-dimensional array, a 2-dimensional array. Now the next thing that we need to understand is how do we declare an array and how do we use an array? How do we store items in it? How do we name an array, right? Obviously I need to give a name to my list, right? I would give a name to it. So how do we declare it? How do we store items in it? If I have to read one of the items, what is the meaning of reading? I have to output some data from that array, right? That also we'll understand. But before we move on to that, you need to understand what an array index is. To understand an array index, you simply need to understand the concept of positions, right? The concept of position. Suppose I have a list of numbers 10. Suppose I have a list of numbers 10, 20, 40, 16, 18, 13, 90, 100. Suppose I have a list of numbers, right? Now each of the number in this array, this is a 1D array because it has a single data stream, right? Now in this kind of an array, each of these elements are going to have their own index, right? They are going to have their own index. Or you can also say index, if you want to simplify it, you can say index is the position, right? So each of them will have a position. For example, if this starts at 1, if the array starts at 1, right, and the array goes till 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right, 8. If the array starts at 1, so 10 is at the first index. If I ask you, 40 is an element in the array, what is the index of it? So 40 indexes, the index for 40 is 3, right? 16 has number 4, so 16's index is 4th, right? So index is the position of the numbers we place. Sometimes an array can also start from 0, right? The index or the positions can also start from 0. That depends on how you made the array. We'll understand that, how you can make it, 0 or 1. We'll understand that. But suppose if the array were to start from 0, right? If the array was starting from 0, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The story remains the same. If I ask you what is the index of 40, earlier it was 3, but now since we are starting with 0, the index for 40 is 2 now, right? So the concept remains same. So this is how we see index in 1D array. Let's see how do we see index in a 2D array. Suppose this is the 2D array, right? Now in maths we must have studied about graphs, right? We must have studied about graph. So if I kind of create a graph, if this is my graph, right? If this is my graph, it's a cubic equation. You do not need to know that for computer science. I'm just taking a random example, right? And if I were to say, the value of y-axis at this point is 6 and x-axis at this point is 3, right? If I had to say what is this coordinate, right? If I had to ask you what coordinate is this, you will say 3, 6, right? You will say 3, 6 because we always write, this is a general rule, right? We always write x, y. We cannot write y, x. Simply, whenever we are using array, we always write, whether we want to declare an array, whether we want to see the position of, see the index of some element in an array, whatever we want to do, we'll always write it as row, column, right? Like in maths, we have a general rule, we write it as x, y. In computer science, for arrays, we always write it as row, column. Right? We'll always write it as row, column. Now suppose this is my array, it starts at 1, right? Both row and column, they start at 1. If I ask you, if they start at 1, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? What is the index of Pranay? Right? This row, the index of this row is 1, right? And let's see the column also starts from 1. What is the index of column marks? The index of the column marks is 2. So if I had to say, tell me the index of 89 as an element, right? I have this element 89. I ask you to say what is the index of this element 89. The index of this element 89 will be row, column. So 2, 2, right? What is the index of 89? 2, 2 is the index of 89. What is the index of this number 17, the element 17, right? What is the index of the numbers? L17. Row comma counter, right? Row comma column, sorry, my bad. So row is 3, column is also 3. So 3 comma 3, right, is the answer. If I have to ask you, Ritik, the name Ritik, what is the index of this element? Row comma column. So row, which is 2 comma column 1. So what is the index of Ritik? 2 comma 1, right? So this is the concept of index. Why do we use index? To locate elements in an array, right? Now let's see, using all of the knowledge that we have just gained about arrays, how do we declare arrays? How do we actually use arrays? What is the syntax of it, right? What is a way of writing the code of it so that we can use it in our exams, right? Obviously, because the questions on array, this is something that has 100% chances of coming in your paper. This will for sure come, right? Every 15 marker question after 2021, right? The paper pattern changed, right? Every question, every 15 marker question has the concept of array, right? So you need to understand this very well, because this is the fundamentals of pseudocode that builds upon it, right? So let's without wasting any more time, let's see how do we declare arrays. Let's see how do we declare arrays. Suppose I have a 1D array, right, called marks. I'm storing or let's say I have the names of students, right? I have a class, I have the names of students. It's just the single data stream of names, right? I just want to store the names of the people in my class, right? So it has one data stream, it will be a 1D array. So how do we declare that array, right? Suppose I want to, you can name your array anything, but obviously you will name it, it needs to be a meaningful name, right? It should be a meaningful identifier, right? Otherwise, if you would have to share your code with someone else, how would they identify that this array stores names, right? So always use the most logical name for your array. So I'm storing the names of the people in my class. I'll name my array as name, right? Names. This is what I would like to call my array, right? So how would I declare it? I would say declare. Remember, Cambridge pseudocodes is case sensitive, which means keywords needs to be in capitals. So declare the name of my array, names, colon, in capitals I'll write array, right? Colon, in capital I'll write array. Let's first let's write the standard form to understand. So you'll always write declare, right? Then you put a colon, declare, you'll put the array's name, whatever you want to name your array as. Then you'll write array in capitals. You will specify the array's range, right? You will specify the array's range of, you will also specify its data type, right? So this is the syntax of declaring an 1D array, declaring a 1D array, right? You would always need to declare, right? That's what we have learned in our previous lectures also. So declare array name, array, the range of the array. For example, it's a 1D array, it has a single data stream. For example, there are 20 students in my class. So what would be the range? 1 to 20, right? So let's write this example, right? Let's write an example. So I would say declare, what's the name of my array? The name of my array is names. So already declare names, right? I'll put colons. I'll write array in capital. I'll write array in capital, right? Then I'll put the range of the array. Suppose there are 20 students in my class, so there will be 20 names. So 1 to 20, right? I'll put my range of, since they are names, they will have alphanumeric characters. So my data type of the array will be string. Simple, right? Simple. This is how you declare a 1D array. Now when we have to declare a 2D array, things get a little bit complex. Let's see how would you declare a 2D array. So the general format of declaring a 2D array is declare, right? This is the general format of declaring a 2D array. Declare array name, declare array name, the name of your array, array in capitals, range for row, range for column of data type, right? Since a 2D array has rows and columns, so we need to declare both rows and columns range, right? We need to declare the range of both. Here we only had a single data stream. Here we have, it can be multiple data streams, right? So this will be for row, this will be for column, right? Now let's say I need to make an array for my class, right? For my class. So I'll name my array as class. I'll name my array as class data, right? I'll name my 2D array as class data. What does class data include? Data about my class, right? That's why I named it as class data. Now what kind of data would this class data include? Suppose it has, it has these columns. It stores the name, right? It stores the names. It stores the class likings. What does my class like, right? Or let me just increase the size of it so it's easier for you to see. So I'm naming my array as class data, right? These are my columns, right? Suppose the students of my class, I'll write their names, right? I'll write what they like to eat, right? What they like to eat. I'll also store what is their favorite festival. What is their favorite festival, and I'll also store who is their favorite teacher, right? So this is what I want to store about my class: their name, what they like to eat, what is their favorite festival, who is their favorite teacher, right? I want to store this data, and there will be 30 rows, right? How many columns? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 columns. Why 30 rows? Because there are 30 students in my class, right? So let's declare this scenario. How would I declare it? I would write declare. Remember, I named my array as class data. So I'll write declare class data, right? Declare class data array. Remember, we always put row first, right? So how many rows are there? There are 30 rows. So 1, 2, 30. How many columns are there? 4 columns. 1 to 4. Right? Of what is the data type? Since everything is alphanumeric, the data type will be string. Right? The data type will be string. So this is an example that we have referred to, and this is the syntax. Right? Now, if you have noticed one thing, array can, whatever is the data in an array, it can always be of a single data type, right? You cannot store, let's say the name and age, right? For name column, you'll put as string, for age column, you'll put as integer. You cannot do that. In that case, you would have to put everything in string, because string also includes numbers and characters, right? So that's why array is always of a single data type. There is no option of entering, no option of defining an array which has more than one data type. Array cannot have more than one data type. It always has a single data type. So I hope declaring an array is clear to you. Now, how do we use this array, right? I have declared my array in my code. If I have to store data in my array, see, this is always in 15 marker question. They give you questions where they have already stored some data, already declared their array and already stored some data, and they have given this array to you to use it. But we should also know it is necessary, because other than 15 markers, in like 3 to 4 marks, they'll sometimes ask you this question to fill in data in an array, right? So how would you fill in data in an array? To fill data in an array, let's see how do we do that. We simply use the concept of index that we just studied, right? We simply use the concept of index. So the title will be storing data. Let's see for 1D array. How do you store data for 1D array? Suppose my array name is names, right? In my first index, I want to store my friend's name Pranay, or let's say my name Pranay, right? Let's store Pranay. So I'll write names, right? In big brackets, squarish brackets, I'll write index number 1, because on the first index I want to store my name. An assignment arrow, right? double quotes. Why? Because whenever we put a text, remember, anywhere in pseudocodes, whenever we put a text, it is always in double quotes, right? Whatever you do not write, whatever you write except the double quotes. Outside the double quotes is your pseudocode, right? Anything you write inside the text, inside these two quotes, that is considered to be text. So I want to write text. I want to, on the first index of this array, I want to store my name, which is Pranay, right? Suppose on the second index I want to store Ritik. So names, index number 2, I'll store Ritik, right? Similarly, index number 3, I would store the third name, right? Which will be my friend's name, Dave. So this is how you fill in data inside 1D array. This is how you store data inside 1D array. What if I ask you that I have already stored this data? Now I want you to clear this array. How would you remove everything? How would you delete everything in an array? To delete everything in an array, we simply put blank spaces, right? Suppose I had to, the question says they have already stored some data in this array. You have to clear this array. You have to delete all the data. So for every index, you would put a loop for this, but just for the explanation, I'm not doing that. I'll just put blank space. What is this going to do? This is going to delete everything in your array, right? Now let's see how do we store data in 2D array. Again, you'll use the concept of indexes, right? So suppose I want to store data in 2D array, right? Suppose I have, let's take a scenario, right? My scenario is I have my class data, right? I store my names here, right? I store, then I also store their food likings, what they like to eat, which festival they like to celebrate, and who is their favorite teacher. Right? And these are the rows. Suppose I have to store, right? I have to store my friend's name, right? In the first index. In the first row, I want to store the data of the first person. Suppose I want to store festivals data, right? Person number 1, what I need to store, what this first person likes in festival, right? What they like, which festival is their favorite. How would I store it? I would write the array's name, which is class data, right? I would write row comma column. So which row is it? It is row number 1. So in the first row, right, what column is it? It is column number 3. So in the first row, third column, I want to store their favorite festival, for example, Christmas, my bad. I want to store Christmas. Again, Christmas is in text, so I'll store it in double quotes. This is how you store data in 2D array. A tiny homework for you, right? Just put your answers in the comment box. I'm going to check it, right? Suppose the fifth person, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth person, again, the fifth person likes to eat pizza, right? Likes to eat pizza. Try using the same logic and store this data in our array, right? Store this data in our array. Okay, let's do a small question, right? I'm just taking the same example, right? We have a 2D array called class data, right? And what does class data store? It stores data about 30 students in a class. It stores their name, what food they like to eat, their favorite festival, and their favorite teacher. We need to write a program to input data into this array. So we need to input this much amount of data for 30 students. Now we won't put individual lines for 30 students. What we can do is we can use loops, right? Remember, for arrays, it is always recommended to use a for loop because we know the number of iterations, right? If you don't know about loops, please go check out the video. It has already been uploaded on CambiHub's YouTube channel. Why do we say that we need to use a for loop? Why do we recommend that? Because we already know the set number of iterations. How do I know the set number of iteration? I know there are 4 columns. I know there are 30 rows because there are 30 students and there are 4 columns. So for row, remember, for row we are using students, right? So whatever the number of students, that will be the number of rows. The column corresponds to their likings. So whatever are there, these likings, we are storing that in column. So how many rows do we have? We have 30 rows. How many columns do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 columns. So you can always decode a question in rough, right? In blank page, you can always make a planning like this whenever you have a pseudocode question. Right? So let's see how do we put a loop to store all of this data into our array. Right? So I'm erasing the question. I'll just get aside. If you want to pause the video and read the question again, you can do that. Right? Now I'm going to erase the question. Let's see the answer for this. See, a for loop always has a counter, right? So we need to declare a counter here. But please, before I show you the answer, before I tell you how to do it, please understand this logic carefully. Please understand this logic carefully, right? What the question is same, right? Question is same. It stores the names. It stores the food they like to eat, their festivals, right? And their favorite teacher, right? Here we need to put 2 for loops, right? We'll put a loop inside a loop, right? The outer loop is going to be for row. The outer loop is going to be for the row. The inner loop is going to be for the column. Because row always comes first, column comes next, right? So row and then the column, right? How would this work? Suppose my row's value is 1. The counter value for my row is 1. So for the first row, my column counter should repeat, right? For the first row, the column's value will be 1. So it stores the data for 1 column, right? Then this loop repeats, it stores the data for the second column. Then this inner loop repeats, it stores the data for the third column. Then this inner loop repeats, and then it stores the data for the fourth column, right? This is for row number 1. Then the outer loop repeats and the row's value is 2. So now we'll store data for the second row, right? Now we'll store data for the second row. So this loop, the outer loop now repeats and the value for that row is 2. Now the inner column counter will run. The column counter will be 1, so it stores data for this, right? The first column. Then this inner loop will repeat, it will store the data for the second column. Then this inner loop is going to repeat, it is going to store the data for the third column, and then finally this inner loop will repeat again and store the data for the fourth column. Then my row counter, the outer loop, not the inner one, right? The outer loop is going to repeat again, and now the row's value is going to be 3. For the third row, right? For the third row, now we are storing value for the third row. The column's value will be 1, so it stores data for the first column. Column's value will be 2, so it stores data for the second column. Column's value is going to be 3, so it stores data for the third column. Column's value is going to be 4, so it stores data for the fourth column. So that's why, right? For the first row, we are running a loop with the columns. For the second row, we are running a loop for the columns. For the third row, we are running a loop for the columns. So outer loop will always be for row and inner loop will always be for column. So since we have 4 columns, for each row, this inner loop is going to run for 4 times, and the outer loop is going to run for 30 times. So for each row, we are storing 4 values for 4 columns, right? That's why we put a inner loop and an outer loop. Please remember, the outer loop is row, the inner loop is column. Now let's see how do we solve this particular question. If you forgot the question, just rewind and see the question now, because I'll tell you the answer. So let's see the answer. Again, we need to declare 2 kind of things, right? 2 kind of counters, because we are declaring 2 for loops, right? One should be, we are using 2 for loops, the outer loop and inner loop. So we need to make 2 counters. One will be a row counter, one will be a column counter. So let's see. So I'll say declare row counter as integer, right? Then I would say declare the column counter as integer, right? Now let's start putting the loop. I'll say for row counter. For row counter, how many times the row counter needs to run? Remember, row is corresponding the number of students. How many students we have? 30. So for row counter 1 to 30, right? Similarly, now we'll put the inner loop for column counter. How many columns are there? 4 columns are there. So 1, 2, 4. For column counter 1 to 4, right? Then we are going to input, we'll say input, what is the name of the array? Class data. So class data, right? Row counter, column counter, right? Then we are going to end both of the loops. So next, column counter, right? And next, row counter. So what did we do? What did we do here? Right? The row counter is going to run from 1 to 30. I hope you understood the logic of outer loop and inner loop, right? Because outer loop is going to stay there. For the first row, we are going to store 4 set of data for each column. Then second row, the outer loop repeats, and then inner loop is going to repeat 4 times. Then for the next row, the inner loop is going to repeat 4 times. So I hope you understand that logic. But why did we put row counter and column counter? Because suppose if it is storing data for the first row, so at that time rows counter value will be 1, right? And suppose it is storing data for the first column, the inner loop repeats to 1, so the value will be 1 and 1, right? Then the inner loop is going to repeat 1, 2. Then the inner loop is going to repeat 1, 3. Then the inner loop is going to repeat 1, 4, right? Then the outer loop is going to repeat. Now we'll come to second row, right? So row counter's value is 2. Column counter, the inner loop repeats for the first time. So 2, 1. Then the inner loop repeats for the next time. 2, 2. Then the inner loop repeats again. 2, 3. Then the inner loop repeats again. 2, 4. Similarly, this whole process will go for 30 times, right? Because there are 30 rows, right? For each row, the column counter will repeat for 4 times to store data in 4 columns. I hope the logic is clear to you, right? This is the code for that question. I know that this logic is a bit difficult to understand, but if you understand it right now, then 15 marker is going to be a cakewalk for you. So if you didn't understand, just rewind the video and try watching the whole logic again, because this is a very important logic, right? Now let's tweak the question a bit, right? Let's tweak the question a bit. Now the question says that class data, the array class data has already been defined, right? Output the whole array. We need to output the whole array, right? So this is a homework question for you. You'll write the answer in the comment, right? I'll just tell you how to output a single piece of data in an array, right? So for 1D array, suppose I have the names of people, right? If I have to output the 4th name, right? So I'll write output names and in bracket I'll write 4, right? Similarly for column counter, if I have maybe the 3rd row and the 2nd column, 3rd row and 2nd column, how would I output this data, 3rd row and 2nd column? To output this, I'll write output class data row comma counter. What is the row? The row is 3, so third row. Counter is 2, second counter. Right? So this is how we, in general, I have told you that we output this. Now using the knowledge, right? Using your whole, the knowledge that we have just gained from this whole video, try answering this question. Right? You already know there are 30 rows and 4 columns. All the best. Try this question and send me in the chat box. Thank you everyone for watching this video. If you like this video, please like and subscribe the channel. Before you leave, we do have a WhatsApp community where we provide 24/7 support for free for your doubts. We provide the tuition service. We also have a lot of teachers. We provide a tuition service. We also provide a lot of opportunities to build your portfolio. Like we have this section called winter programs and summer programs where we have, classes like Python classes and a lot of stuff, right? So you can visit the WhatsApp community. The link will be in the description below. For all of the IGCSE resources for free, right? Past papers, worksheets, you can visit our learning portal, which is www.cambihub.com. If you're visiting on a mobile device, click on 3 dots, select your board and subject, and you'll find resources for that, right? If you have any doubts regarding any business inquiries, you can send us at support@cambihub.com. If you have any computer science doubts, obviously you can use the comments below, or you can send it to me at Pranay@cambihub.com. This is Pranay signing off for this video. I'll meet you in the next video lecture.